July 4th holiday. And now United CEO has a reason why: global warming. He blamed storms that grounded jets on climate change, but others said United messed up crew scheduling. President Joe Biden isn't worried about his re-election. He's so confident of winning, he told NATO that he'll be back at the annual summit for the next 5 years. Ray Epps is kind of a scandalous figure in the January 6 investigations, and now the guy suspected of being an FBI plant is expected to be charged like hundreds of others for rioting. And yes, there really is a code inside prisons, and Olympic sex scandal doctor Larry Nassar apparently got stabbed for violating it. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
Welcome to Stinchfield. It has become clear to me that I think every policy the Democrats push is simply to push back against Republicans. Democrats don't care about public safety. They don't care about America. They certainly don't care about you. All they care about are being on the opposite side of whatever Republicans push, even if what Republicans push should be a bipartisan bill, a policy with bipartisan support. Have you heard about this bill in California that failed to get out of committee? It would have made child sex trafficking a, quote, serious felony in California. Now, serious felony is actually a legal term in California that makes the penalties more serious, as it sounds. So 6 Democrats abstained from voting on this bill, so it left it stranded in committee. This is the Republican senator who offered up the bill.
You can pass a note to a bank and rob a bank. You can commit arson, and that's considered a serious felony. But to traffic a minor child in the state of California is not. That's something wrong. I mean, I'm talking 0 to 17, where the average age is 10. And they would not pass this bill.
So what would the bill do? It's pretty simple stuff, right? When it comes to child sex trafficking, who is not against that? Apparently Democrats in Sacramento. Repeat offenders would stay in prison longer. It would make them ineligible to be released early. And it would add child sex trafficking to California's 3 strikes law. All sounds like common sense. Yet the Democrats refuse to be tough on crime, refuse to be tough on child sex traffickers. Because why? Because there's a new movie out called Sound of Freedom that's killing it in the box office right now. They can't stand the fact that American citizens, no matter where they stand on the political aisle, are flocking to see this movie that exposes the evil ways of the sex trade industry and sex trafficking throughout the world. This is Jim Caviezel. He was on my buddy Steve Bannon's show, War Room, this morning. Jim Caviezel is one of the stars. He plays Tim Ballard, the movie that the actor of the movie was made about. So this is Caviezel on the show this morning.
There was a California law just last night that didn't go through. Maybe, Steve, you know a little bit about it. Mel texted me this morning and said, what the heck is this? California law, which would have made it harder on pedos and traffickers, didn't go through. Biden, DOJ, removes international sex trafficking of minors as an area of concern. California passed a law that you can kill babies 28 days after they're born. I'd like to say to the politicians that have gone along with these laws, when you look at God someday, you will understand you had your chance. There's probably a little bit chance left for you to turn this around, but you probably won't because you're bought and paid for.
I agree with them. You know what the great thing about God is, though? There's always a chance to turn it around. God's forgiving. So no matter what you did in the past, ask for forgiveness and then get on board with what's right. And supporting a bill like this is what's right. You listen to all the other things he spelled out there. This is insanity. The Democrat Party today has literally gone off the deep end. California, by the way, is a weak on crime state. We know that. Though it is the #1 state for sex trafficking in this country. #1. And California does nothing to push back on this. Now, there's another part of the story that's not being talked about. There are some other crimes that were going to be labeled as serious felonies that were also killed in this bill. They refused to make a serious crime. You ready for the list? Here it is. The list is assault with a deadly weapon, solicitation of murder, okay, rape under various circumstances, assault with a deadly weapon, and elder and dependent abuse. How can you not make those things a serious crime? But this is California, a state where nothing makes sense. So they tell us that all of this is just conspiracy theory stuff, that child sex trafficking isn't real, it's a QAnon conspiracy theory. Well, you tell that to Odessa Perkins. Odessa Perkins was a victim of child sex trafficking. Here's what she had to say about all this.
This child, their innocence, can be stolen 100 times a day. Then the next day they have to wake up and it can be stolen another 100 times that day. And for those kids who do get out 2, 3, 4 years from now, how many bodies have been on top of their innocent, young, small body? That's how important it is to combat human trafficking.
If that is not a wake-up call, if that is not a shaking you by the shoulders and say, do you see what's going on? I don't know what is. That's a woman who experienced it firsthand, and they tell us all this stuff's conspiracy theory stuff. I'm going to tell you something who we better look out for. Governor Gavin Newsom. This guy, boy, he's starting to polish up. He is smooth as silk, cool as a cucumber, cool as the flip side of a pillow, as they say. I'm nervous about this guy running for president because now, look what he's doing. He's pushing back against the Democrats in California that wouldn't allow this bill to move forward. Why? Because he's running for president and he knows it wouldn't look good on a national basis. This is Gavin Newsom.
It's an area I care deeply about, have since my time as mayor, as a supervisor, working with then District Attorney Kamala Harris. I appreciate Shannon Grove's efforts on this and wanted to make sure she knew that today. And we'll be following up, and we'll have more to say about that very shortly.
Oh, give me a break. He doesn't care about the children. The only guy that Gavin Newsom cares about is himself. He's got his eye on the prize. I believe that's actually the White House. He talks about this as an issue he cared deeply about. He has never been tough on crime. He has never supported police in any way, shape, or form. Listen to him 3 years ago.
And when you hear terms like hashtag defund the police, what does that mean to you?
It means we've got to fundamentally change policing in this state and this nation. It means that we're overly reliant on policing to address social services out on the streets, to address the issues and needs of homeless community, folks out there suffering with addictions, people with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, paranoia, people with mental health issues. And we're asking a police-first approach to solve these problems. That's not what policing should be doing.
Let me tell you about policing in America today. It is as polished as it gets. There are millions of encounters every day, and by and large, nearly every one of them goes perfectly. You only hear about the ones that don't. Police don't need more training in America today. Police are some of the highly trained officers throughout the world. Yet Gavin Newsom never, ever supported them. Now he's going to walk this line saying, oh, I support the kids when it comes to sex trafficking. Give me a break. It's only because he wants higher office. All of this reminds me of not that long ago. California voted down a anti-gun violence bill. You would think they'd be all for anti-gun violence. A bill that would have gave very stiff penalties to any criminal that uses a firearm in commission of a crime. Add 20 years to the sentence. Now, California says they're tough on guns. Why wouldn't they want that to go through? Because California is not tough on guns. California is tough on law-abiding gun owners. They're not tough on criminals who use guns. So they wouldn't pass that bill. That bill was offered up by Bill Asaley, a Republican, to expose the Democrats in Sacramento for what they are, a bunch of phony, fake frauds. This is Bill Asaley talking about it.
We're talking about individual cases in which you are charged with the most heinous crime and you use a firearm to commit it. There is no rehabilitation for somebody willing to pull a trigger against another human being. That is not always rehabilitatable. Sometimes that's just pure evil, and we have to lock you up to ensure the safety of the community so you will not do it again. We are not interested in mass incarceration. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about getting the worst of the worst off the street who are willing to shoot a police officer in the face like Deputy Cordero in my county.
Listen to me. If you're sincere about stopping gun violence, right, which we all are, why wouldn't you give tough penalties to people that commit crimes using guns? Because that's not what it's about to the Democrats. It's about doing away with guns altogether and ensuring that law-abiding citizens don't have an ability to use firearms. I will tell you that California is pro-criminal and anti-freedom. The freedom to be safe in that state. Joining me now is my friend, the legendary conservative talk show host and now 2024 presidential candidate in the Republican primary, Larry Elder, is with us. Larry, it is great to see you.
Great to see you too, Grant. Thank you for having me.
Larry, there's probably not anybody out there who knows what California does, acts like than you. You've been covering these politics for so long. You live in that state. What do you make of what's happening in that state today when it comes to these issues?
Well, California, Grant, is a state that treats business people like criminals and criminals like victims. And regarding Gavin Newsom suddenly becoming Dirty Harry, this is a guy who appointed George Gascon, the soft on crime DA in San Francisco. He's the one who drafted Proposition 47 that allows you to steal up to almost $1,000, not just a day, but per store. And if you get caught, they write you a ticket because you committed a misdemeanor, and you have zero chance of going to jail because it's cashless bail. Gavin Newsom also supported Proposition 57 that reduced a whole bunch of violent offenses to nonviolent offenses, and they include assault on a police officer. I kid you not, that is now in California a nonviolent offense. Rape of an intoxicated victim is a nonviolent offense. Serial arson is a nonviolent offense, and Gavin Newsom supported that proposition. So, this is like that movie Chinatown. Jake, this is California, where the voters have voted for these bills. They call them reforms. They're not reforms, and it's making things worse. Crime is up in the categories in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in San Diego, which is why people are leaving those cities and businesses are leaving those cities. And Gavin Newsom has the gall to believe that he may someday be the Democratic Party nominee. We could only be so lucky. Most of the country has no idea what a left-wing loon this guy is.
Yeah. A lot of people think he'd be easier to run against because all you have to do is look at California and see the disaster that he has created with that state. But Larry, I'll tell you what, I issue a warning to all my conservatives who think Gavin Newsom may be an easy beat in the presidential race. This guy, man, is smooth. I watched his interview with Sean Hannity. He controlled that interview. This guy would be a formidable foe if he got into this race.
Only if you don't know what he's been backing. This is the guy who signed the bill to set up the reparations panel, that 80% of the American people are against reparations. He set up a commission to determine the wages of fast food workers. He has banned the sale of new gas-powered cars by 2025 or 2035, never mind what the consumers want. He has mandated that if you're going to graduate from high school, you have to take a course in ethnic studies. He signed a bill making large toy stores have a gender-neutral toy aisle. He signed a bill mandating that if you're a publicly held corporation in California, you have to have at least one member of the LGBTQIA on your board of directors. Never mind that it clearly violates the 14th Amendment. Most Americans have no idea what a left-wing loon this guy is. And when he was a mayor of San Francisco, he promised to end homelessness in that town by the end of his second term. Have you been to San Francisco? I don't believe he's got a chance once people realize what a left-wing loon he is.
No. The reality is I have not been to San Francisco recently, and I'm not going. And that's the sign of what everybody's thinking. Nobody wants to go to San Francisco anymore. Larry, the reason I bring you on is because nobody knows Gavin Newsom like you did. You ran against him for governor, sadly lost that race. But you see him for what he is. But here's what he has going for him. The media is going to cover up all those things. The average everyday folks, just like the Hunter Biden laptop, we never learned about that. If we did, President Trump would most certainly still be in the White House if they didn't cheat as well. But the media is on his side.
Well, that's true, but it's hard to cover up the fact that for the first time in 170 years, people are leaving California. It's hard to cover up that our schools rank near the bottom of all 50 states. It's hard to cover up the fact that the average price of a home in California is 175% above the national average, largely because the Democrats are in bed with the environmentalists and they hate construction of new properties. It's hard to cover up the fact that we one time had a $100 billion surplus that Gavin Newsom bragged about. Now it's a $30 billion deficit. It's hard to hide the fact that he set up a reparations committee that's suggesting that Californians pay $350,000 to descendants of slaves. These are all the things Gavin Newsom has done, and I don't see how you can paper these things away. He is, as I said before, a left-wing loon, and once the American people realize that, he'll have zero chance of beating any normal Republican. So we can only hope that Gavin Newsom is a nominee. But as I said to you before, Grant, he won't be, because the nominee is going to be Joe Biden if he can fog up a mirror, and if not, it'll be Kamala Harris, because the Democrats are all about race-basing, identity, gender politics. And the reason Ketanji Brown Jackson is the Supreme Court justice is because Jim Clyburn, as a condition of supporting Joe Biden for the South Carolina primary, extracted a promise that he appoint a black female. Gavin Newsom, when it was apparent or seemed to be apparent that Dianne Feinstein was going to resign, promised to appoint a black female. Joe Biden chose Kamala Harris because she is a black female. So Gavin Newsom is going to come in on a white horse and kick aside the woman who would be the first black female president of the United States. I don't think so. The largest, the biggest, the most loyal part of the Democratic base are blacks, and black females are even more loyal than the black men, and they will be livid if Gavin Newsom is Gavin Newsom or Mayor Pete is the nominee. Side, they won't be so angry that they'll vote Republican. They just won't vote, thereby guaranteeing that whoever it is that we nominate will win. So they can't afford that. That's why do you suppose Gavin Newsom, Grant, has not declared already? What was he waiting for? He doesn't want to push aside Kamala Harris and be perceived as a white man coming and taking her spot. He can't do that. So they're stuck with her. They're stuck with Biden and Harris.
And I know for a fact, I don't think he has any love for Kamala Harris. I think the man actually despises her.
And as I said, and when it appeared that Feinstein might have resigned, he was promising to appoint a black female. How are you going to promise to appoint a black female to the senator and then kick aside the person who's next in line to be president on the Democratic side, a black female? And by the way, Grant, I need 40,000 individual donations for me to qualify for the debate next month in August. Go to elderforpresident.com. The amount you give can be as little as $1. Get me up there talking about fatherlessness and this lie about America being systemically racist and crime. Get me up there talking about these kinds of issues that our side, in my opinion, does not talk enough about.
I'm not going to say who the opponent is in your race that was literally buying donations. He was offering a $20 gift card for a $1 donation because he's at the bottom of the pack.
Well, I'm from the old school, Grant. I think that you're supposed to ask voters for their vote, not pay for their vote, but that's just me.
Or their donation. I mean, I'll give you $20 for a $1 donation. I guess he just wants to be on the debate stage. I'm not even going to say who it is because it's such a scam of a way to get donations.
It reminds me, Grant, of Joe Biden promising student debt relief in exchange for getting young people's votes. What's the difference? He was buying votes with our money.
It's the Democrat way. Unfortunately, we got a few in the Republican Party that think like that.
Right.
Larry Elder, it is always great to talk to you. Don't forget elderforpresident.com, elderforpresident.com. As you always say, throw some money in the tip jar, and we appreciate you coming on the program.
My pleasure. Anytime, Grant. Thanks.
All right, absolutely. All right, folks, the Secret Service is shutting down their investigation into the cocaine found in the White House because they say they just can't figure out who left it there. They have 500 suspects. Well, you could narrow that down, couldn't you? We'll talk to a former Secret Service agent about all that next. Welcome back, everyone. There's no doubt in my mind that the federal government, specifically the Department of Justice, is the Democrats' own private police force. They do whatever the Democrats want, and they certainly cover for any Democrat in position of power. That goes for the Bidens, the Biden crime family, Hunter Biden, all of them. There's a new email that surfaced. This is apparently from a Burisma executive to Hunter Biden, only a month before Joe Biden held back that basically bribe from the U.S. government about the $1 billion unless they fire the prosecutor. Would you like to hear what's in that email a month before Joe Biden made those claims? It reads this: "My only concern is for us to be on the same page regarding our final goals. With this in mind, I would like us to formulate a list of deliverables, including, but not limited to, a concrete course of action, including meetings, communication, resulting in high-ranking U.S. officials in Ukraine and in the U.S., publicly or in private, communication, comment, expressing their positive opinion and support of Nicolae Burisma to the highest level of decision makers here in Ukraine, President of Ukraine, President, Chief of Staff, Prosecutor General, etc. The scope of work should also include an organization of a visit of a number of widely recognized and influential current and or former U.S. policymakers to Ukraine in November aiming to conduct meetings with and bring positive signal message and support on Nikolai's issue to the Ukrainian top officials above, with the ultimate purpose to close down for any case pursuits against Nikolai in Ukraine. Close it down. Shut it down. Get the prosecutor out of the way. And what happens a month later? Hunter Biden's father says this.
I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a got fired.
Think about the money flowing from Burisma to Hunter Biden. Joe Biden is then vice president. It makes that admission on camera. That is an admission to a crime. That is a shakedown number one, and yet nothing happens. This is the height of cover-up. The FBI should be ashamed of itself. Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, talked about that today in front of reporters.
Why does the IRS go after Americans, but when it comes to the Biden family, they let the statute of limitations run out for the most grievous, that an IRS whistleblower has to come through to Congress? But why does the IRS remove these workers from going after these cases when it comes to the Biden family? Why are the Biden family treated different than every other American family?
Because they're the chief members of the deep state, the Obama, Clinton, Biden axis of corruption. It is very real. The deep state protects them, and the DOJ is at the heart of the deep state. Now there's the case of the cocaine in the White House. We get word today the Secret Service is closing down the investigation. Why? They say they're not going to be able to find who left the cocaine there. They have up to 500 suspects. I say, give me a break. They know where the cocaine was found. They have to know where it was. There's video everywhere. You can't tell me you can't go through the video and figure this all out. And what about fingerprints? Well, joining me now to help maybe answer some of these questions is former Secret Service agent himself, and he is president of Lionheart International Services Group. Tim Miller is with us. Tim, it is great to see you again.
Thanks for having me, Grant. It's good to see you.
All right, Tim, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I love the Secret Service. I actually tried to be a Secret Service agent. I failed my eye test, which this is how backwards the government is. I passed everything along the way and took the eye test last. That was a waste of time on their part and mine, but I love the Secret Service. But I will say this, are you embarrassed that they say they can't find out whose cocaine this is?
Grant, I'm in shock. And like you, I love the Secret Service. One of the greatest honors of my life was being a Secret Service agent, was with that position of trust and confidence, trying to do the very best I could to serve the presidents regardless of party and to do the right thing. And this whole thing has me just totally perplexed because closing an investigation, most folks don't realize that every Secret Service agent is not just a protection agent. They do some of the most complex investigations all over the world relative to counterfeit and financial fraud. And so now we have a case that's very clear-cut. It's cocaine in one of the most secure buildings in the world. And we close the case within a week and a half and say we just can't find it. I am just perplexed, and a lot of things don't make sense to me.
Tim, are there cameras everywhere in the White House? I mean, is it as simple as saying there's cameras in this room? You'd see who's coming and going. Is there cameras on the spot where the cocaine was found? And I should ask you, do we know definitively where this cocaine was found? It changed throughout the course of a few days.
Well, therein lies the problem, Grant. And let me just say this, where cameras are inside the White House, I'm sure it's changed in the period. I know for a long period of time that was considered workspace. And you can imagine a lot of issues come with having cameras inside of workspaces, even in that area. But remember, all these people are trusted people. They're cleared. And the thing that just perplexes me is, okay, now they're saying that the range was Friday through Monday. However, However, I know that Secret Service officers routinely patrolled. That's how the cocaine was found. So all of a sudden it's found. It's such an alarm that they evacuate the whole building, so they know exactly where it was found, and they know exactly. Let me tell you, anybody coming into the White House grounds, I'm sure you've been there, you don't just stroll into the White House. Even as an official visitor, you're sponsored, you're cleared, there's a lot of screening. So again, to come forward a week and a half later with one of the most important cases we've seen in a long time, that's very troubling to me.
How did we get to a point where they couldn't tell us exactly where it was? First, they said it was in a library. Then they said it was in a cubby next to where Kamala Harris's motorcade leaves from. Then they told us it was someplace else. Look, there's got to be a guy who found it. He knows where he found it. Isn't it that simple?
It is exactly that simple. And let me tell you how this plays out. An investigation is it's a process, Grant, you know this. And a crime's reported to you. In this case, the Secret Service reported the crime. You collect evidence meticulously. You process that evidence meticulously. Then you begin to conduct interviews. Interesting. Nobody's been interviewed that I've heard, at least in the media reports, and no suspects identified. Well, if you have 500 people, there should be some level of accountability in terms of interviewing people to be able to narrow that down. And again, this whole thing just doesn't make sense to me.
Lastly, it's hard for me to even ask you this because I know how much you love the Secret Service. But do you think the Secret Service is covering up this crime?
Well, here's what I know, Grant. When you go through all that process as an investigator, as a criminal investigative agency, it's turned over. The evidence is turned over, ultimately for prosecution to the U.S. Attorney's Office. In this case, it would be the U.S. Attorney in D.C. Now, the Secret Service doesn't have any say in what's prosecuted, what's not prosecuted. And to me, that's the question that needs to be asked. Hey, what evidence was collected? And they're saying no suspects. Well, clearly, if you have video of every single person coming in and going out, and let's be clear, that uniform division officer was making regular rounds. I won't go into the detail of how often, but within a specific time frame, he walked through or she walked through. There was nothing there, and now there's something there. Well, to me, that as an investigator, that would limit the time frame. That would cause me to focus more on who came on the property, who left the property. If this is a staff person, it would be unusual that you're there on Saturday. Well, maybe. Some staff work on the weekends, but that would further narrow down your pool. And again, I'm not going to presuppose that the Secret Service is covering anything up. I will tell you that there are a lot of irregularities in this that don't make sense. And as we're seeing kind of across all of the major departments, you and I live off integrity, what's right and what's wrong, and doing the right thing.
Well, you raised an issue which I'm upset I didn't think about right off the bat. The U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C., they are despicable right now. That's Matthew Graves. He has impeachment articles filed against him. He's been horrible for J6ers. We know he protects the Bidens. There could be something at play with him and the U.S. Attorney's Office. And you mentioned suspects. I'll never forget a guy I got to be friends with, Dr. Henry Lee. He's a famed criminologist, worked on the OJ case, and I'll never forget he said to me, he said, in every case, everyone is suspect. You are suspect until you're ruled out. Everyone's. So they have suspects. Believe me, they got plenty of suspects in the White House. One being Hunter Biden, the other maybe rhymes with Paris. That's all I'll say with that. Tim Miller, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, my friend. Stay safe.
All right, good seeing you. All right, folks, one thing that I take very seriously is my health. I try to eat right, but I'll tell you, with my schedule, it's not always easy. So here's how I do it. All right. And I'm so glad I found these guys. I need fruits and vegetables, like 6 cups a day. It's nearly impossible to do until I found Field of Greens. It's amazing. It's easy. It tastes great. It literally does. Tons of different flavors, too. And unlike fruits and vegetable supplements, each specific fruit and vegetable in Field of Greens is medically selected to support specific functions like heart health, liver, kidney health, immune system, metabolism. The list goes on. So here's my challenge to you. Take Field of Greens And I promise you, everyone around you is going to be saying, man, you're looking great. And if they don't, all right, if they don't say, what are you doing? Field of Greens will refund your money. So here's what I would like to offer you. 15% off of your first order. Plus, get another 10% off when you subscribe for reoccurring orders. So here's how you do it. Visit fieldofgreens.com. That's fieldofgreens.com. Use promo code GRANT at fieldofgreens.com. Promo code GRANT and get started today. All right, Republicans asked a lot of great questions to FBI Director Chris Wray at that hearing on Capitol Hill, but there is one question nobody brought up, and it has to do with Christopher Wray and the Chinese Communist Party. I will explain and offer up that one question that needs to be asked next.
I'm sitting here with my father. I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Sounds like a shakedown, doesn't it, Director?
I'm not going to get into commenting on that.
You seem deeply uncurious about it, don't you?
Because they protect the Bidens. That, of course, is FBI Director Christopher Wray, grilled on Capitol Hill. So Wray put his arrogance and disdain for the American people and the rule of law on display. Republicans tried to get to the bottom of all the important issues, but they failed to drill down on one of my biggest concerns with Wray, his ties to China and the Chinese Communist Party. It was a Democrat who almost got to the heart of why the FBI and Christopher Wray may be stonewalling Congress and covering for the Bidens.
Director Wray, you were a partner at an international law firm before you took a drastic pay cut to accept the job of FBI director. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's something my wife reminds me of from time to time.
So that is Hank Johnson, the congressman who asked Wray this question. He's one of the dopiest members of Congress that there is. Literally, the man is stupid. I hate to say that, but he's a member of Congress. He brings it on himself. He thought Guam would capsize with too much of our Navy there. He didn't ask Christopher Wray the most important question. What are your ties to China and that law firm? So here's where it gets complicated. The Chinese state-owned conglomerate HNA Group, controlled by the Chinese Communist Party and headed up by a man named Wang Qishan, the former vice president of the People's Republic of China, had a multi-billion-dollar, we're told, contract with Christopher Wray's law firm, King & Spalding. This is according to research conducted by the new federal state of China, the organization founded by Steve Bannon and Chinese billionaire dissident Miles Kuo. Wray reportedly earned over $14 million from King & Spalding since 2016. So you work and do work for the Chinese Communist Party, potentially making millions of dollars from a country that it can now be deemed our enemy, and now you run the FBI? And remember the Bidens getting money funneled back to them from the CCP, and not one congressman asked Wray about this connection? And by the way, Miles Kuo, arrested by the FBI, sits in prison for what I believe are bogus charges, issued a warning about the American legal system that Wray was a part of and its ties to China.
What's the legal fee of a Chinese state-owned enterprise around the world, including the top 10 banks in China and all the listed companies in China? Do you know how much they spend on American legal fees annually for assets of over $1 trillion? Those American lawyers get about $30 billion in legal fees from the CCP every year. The CCP controls all of these U.S. law firms. Top officials from DOJ or NASDAQ are leaving their positions for big law firms. These former DOJ officials will later likely return to DOJ after they got enriched from their private practices with CCP companies. These U.S. law firms will provide full legal services and protections for CCP kleptocrats from the cradle to the grave. From starting a business, conducting IPO, managing assets, resolving disputes to declaring bankruptcy, seeking bankruptcy protection, and managing as a trustee. That's why U.S. lawyers are the perfect surrogates for CCP to infiltrate the U.S. Department of Justice.
All right, that of course is Miles Kuo. So here's the kicker. King & Spalding, Wray's law firm, represented Miles Kuo. And then Miles says it dropped him as a client once it took on the Chinese-controlled HNA. This needs to be digged into by members of Congress. Bring in Miles Kuo and let him testify about this. With me now to discuss this from the new federal state of China, Nicole Tsai is here. Nicole, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, Nicole, it's good to have you on. Are you surprised that no one asked Christopher Wray about his former firm's ties to Communist China?
I'm not surprised because this is a systemic failure on the U.S. part. I mean, this question should have already been asked to Christopher Wray when he was going through the Senate confirmation process. In fact, he's not the only person that had been enriched by the CCP before he was named to be a federal, the director of FBI. There are hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of America's white shoe law firms doing business in China. And you know what? These lawyers, they're going to China not to help the Chinese people to bring rule of law to China. They're helping the lawless regime, the CCP kleptocrats, help them get enriched, and then they got themselves enriched, and then they go through the revolving door to become a government officials. I mean, so he's not the only one. And if you look at Secretary of Treasury Steven Mnuchin, he worked for the Goldman Sachs, which is also a very important financial partner to the CCP, Henry Paulson, and many federal prosecutors and judges. They all came from very profitable private practices with ties to the CCP. So this is a systematic failure on the U.S. part. And this is exactly how the CCP's weaponization of the DOJ and FBI and other federal government agencies, that's exactly how they did it.
All right, so Nicole, if these allegations are true, that Christopher Wray made millions of dollars off this company controlled by the CCP, He's tasked with enforcing laws, looking into Joe Biden and his ties to the CCP. Not to mention the FBI is the one who arrested Miles Guo, who's literally willing to blow the whistle on anyone connected to the CCP in our federal government and take down the CCP. It seems like a total conflict of interest that you're lining your pockets. It's like the wolf watching the hen house.
Completely. I mean, the right question that should have already been asked to Christopher Wray is that why did he choose to drop Miles as his client, CCP enemy number one, and to pick up a lawless regime to defend? I mean, this country's law firms and lawyers, they're not defending the rule of law. They're defending the lawless country. They're defending a dictatorship. So I think, this should be terrifying to each and every American citizen. So I think that this is how the CCP has been long penetrating in the U.S. and successfully weaponized the DOJ, FBI, and many federal government agencies.
Nicole, I have heard that the Chinese Communist Party acts almost like a mafia family in New York back in the day. It literally goes around the country and hires the biggest law firms possible to tie them up so no one else can hire them. Is this true?
Well, the CCP has always been the highest bidder. And in a capitalist society, the lawyers, if they don't have moral obligation, if they're not loyal to the U.S. Constitution, they can defend anybody. So this is the reason why the CCP got so successful in infiltrating in this country. I mean, literally, they have hijacked the 2020 U.S. presidential election. It's all about the CCP's money. And now the FBI has been covering up the biggest interference with the U.S. election. I mean, they blame it on the Russian, but actually it's the FBI. It's the America's own government agencies that has stolen this country's election. Think about that.
All right, so last question for you. Miles Guo, who sits in a federal prison right now on bogus charges, as I see it, and I've really looked into this very in-depthly, he's willing to testify. Is there any movement on this to have Miles come before Congress and be questioned about all of these issues?
And this is the reason why I'm asking all of your viewers, American people, call your senators, call your congressmen, ask them to bring Miles Guo to testify, because from yesterday's hearing, every American person that I spoke to, they're disappointed. They're not getting the most important answer from Christopher Wray. I mean, he was saying, I can't comment, I don't know, I don't recall. I mean, then bring Miles Guo. He can name the names and he can provide all the evidences. So why not? So call your congressman, call your senator, and ask Miles Guo to testify before the Congress.
The last thing our federal government wants is for a man like that to testify and blow the whistle on the traitors inside our own government. It's very, very sad. Nicole Tsai, I appreciate you coming on the program. So great to see you. Thank you for the work the new federal state of China is doing.
Thank you.
All right. Let's face it, folks, the world is a dangerous place. And with Joe Biden in the Oval Office, you expect anything would get better? Of course not. We've already seen inflation drive up the cost of food. And as that is happening, the Biden administration is pushing needless green energy solutions that hurt our power grid and our food supply. So ask yourself, is your family ready in case of a food shortage or a prolonged power outage? If you think you don't need emergency food, think again. Now is the time to stock up on emergency food from My Patriot Supply at discount prices. So here's what I want you to do. Go to preparewithrav.com, a special website just for all of you, preparewithrav.com, and you'll save big on each 4-week emergency food kit you need for your family. You get breakfast, lunches, dinners, drinks, snacks, everything to keep your family going strong. Best of all, the food is delicious. Your whole family will love it. Act now to save big on each 4-week kit that you need. Go to preparewithrav.com and get free shipping too. What could be easier? You'll never forgive yourself if you let your family suffer. Don't do it. So go to preparewithrav.com. All right, the Biden administration doesn't want to protect children at the border. There's a plan to do this, but I'm sure they're pushing back on this one. We'll get to the bottom of it. Well, folks, there is a bill that has been refiled that Democrats keep trying to kill that is an anti-trafficking bill. It basically would DNA test families coming across the border to make sure that they're actually related, because we know that many of them are not, and they come in under the ruse that they are families and they're actually sex-trafficked children. Well, joining me now is the author of the book Invaded. Former Border Patrol agent J.J. Carroll is here. J.J., this seems like common sense. Why is this having such a hard time getting passed?
Well, because this is an intentional destruction of the American immigration system, and as what incredible time not to pass it when Sound of Freedom comes out in the movies and it's all about child sex trafficking and the female sex trafficking. You're hitting right on the head. You have the Biden administration that did not renew the contract for DNA testing on the border. Let me just give you two numbers. In April, you had over 58,000 family units. In May, you had over 61,000 family units with no DNA testing. Why is that? I will tell you from my experience and talking to all my sources, this continues to, they actually rent children and pass them on to their families. And when they're released into the United States, those children actually go back into Mexico and get rented again. It's hard to believe that this is being allowed in our country, but everyone tells you that knows anything about the border that our government is facilitating all of this. And that is the most immoral and sickening thing, is our government's doing nothing to stop it.
All right, I know it may be anecdotal, but you worked the border for many, many years. You still have sources down there. You wrote the book Invaded, all about it. What do you think the percentage is of legitimate families of those 60,000 family units coming through that are legitimate mom, dad, daughter, son?
I can't even give you a number. That's the truth, because we see it all the time. We see the family units and the kids look scared out of their mind. You just know, I'm a father. My son acts differently when he's near me. He feels safe. He's secure. We see it all the time. But here's the biggest problem, Grant. You're talking about over hundreds of thousands of people that are being arrested and then released. There is no time to determine if that little child is actually with his family member. We're moving them out so fast. The government wants nothing but the agents to process and release as quickly as you can. You know this. We talked about this in the past. Mayorkas got instated back in March and April this year that HHS has lost 85,000 children. We have no idea where they're at. We're finding them in meatpacking plants working at 2 o'clock in the morning. We know that they're being sex trafficked. Our government knows that this is happening, and they're doing nothing to stop it.
JJ, I'm told by the left, no matter how many victims I talk to, no matter how many agents I talk to, I'm told by the left this is all a big conspiracy theory, that we're all just crazy QAnon supporters thinking that these kids are being sex trafficked. What do you say to them?
I say the federal government came out with a number saying that there's 14,000 to 17,500 people are trafficked every year in America. Those are DOJ numbers. I believe those numbers are in the hundreds of thousands to millions. But let's just go off of that crazy conservative number of 14,000. To the leftists out there, are you okay with 14,000 people being sex trafficked in our country in 2023? Are you okay with that? I'm not okay with it. And that's why I'm speaking out. This is insanity. This is beyond insanity, Grant. This is evil. We are witnessing evil take place in our nation, where we stay silent and facilitate the destruction of young kids' lives. We're talking about toddlers that are 2 years old that are being sex trafficked. 2 years old, Grant. Let that sink in for a second and tell me that you wouldn't do everything in your power to stop it, even if it was just one kid. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of children in our nation.
It is sick, and this is why I say we are under a satanic attack right now in this country. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, I don't need to be a Border Patrol agent to tell you that if you DNA test the one who's supposed to be the parent and the one who's supposed to be the kid and it's not a match, well, now you got a problem. It literally is that simple. And why they won't get on board with this, we know the reason. They're literally trying to destroy us as the days go by. The book, again, is called Invaded. J.J. Carroll is the author. We appreciate you coming on tonight. As always, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Disney CEO Bob Iger says Disney is not trying to sexualize children, really? That's next.
Here are some of the headlines we are featuring today from your favorite news outlets at offthepress.com. Air travel has been a mess all year, and it really hit a crisis during the July 4th holiday. And now United CEO has a reason why: global warming. He blamed storms that grounded jets on climate change, but others said United messed up crew scheduling. President Joe Biden isn't worried about his re-election. He's so confident of winning, he told NATO that he'll be back at the annual summit for the next 5 years. Ray Epps is kind of a scandalous figure in the January 6 investigations, and now the guy suspected of being an FBI plant is expected to be charged like hundreds of others for rioting. And yes, there really is a code inside prisons, and Olympic sex scandal doctor Larry Nassar apparently got stabbed for violating it. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
The notion that Disney is in any way sexualizing children, quite frankly, is preposterous and inaccurate.
Well, this is going to keep going on.
Oh, really, Bob Iger? It's inaccurate? They're not sexualizing children over there at Disney? Watch.
Our leadership over there has been so welcoming to my not at all secret gay agenda. I was just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness to if you see anything queer in the show, I'm proud family. But I just was no one would stop me, and no one was trying to stop.
So that's a Disney employee saying no one's trying to stop her. Add queerness to the shows. Do our kids really need to be seeing shows that are adding queerness to it? Come on, Disney. It's a disappointment. Walt Disney must really be just beside himself if he could look down and see what's going on. That's going to do it for us today, folks. I appreciate all of you watching. You are Stinchfield's Army, and I love it, and you roll. So do I. We'll do it again tomorrow night. See you then.